Listening to the Hometown Losers, the St. Louis Sports Podcast, with Josh, Adam, and OJ.
Hey, everybody, welcome back here to the Hometown Losers Podcast. This is session number 60, the Big 6-0, and I am joined, as always, by my co-hosts, Adam and OJ. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here. How's everyone else doing?
I'm good now that my mic is working properly.
Technical difficulties.
Or
Yeah.
Zoom is
You got a
allowing
case
me to use
of
my
the
mic,
Mondays.
I should say.
This is, I guess, the third Monday of the week.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's super fun. Like, when we used to use Team for this, it was just, like, so easy. But then, like, and Zoom is not bad, but it's definitely not great.
It's not
either.
easy.
It's always, yeah, exactly. It's just, once you get everything set up, it's not bad.
Right.
But as you said, it's set up. So, and for any of the listeners out there, a different platform that works, definitely let us know. We would love to hear from you on that aspect of things, because obviously we're not married to Zoom at this point. That's for sure.
No, we just found it. It was an option. It was cheap. And it
Free.
records to the cloud.
Right.
Yeah.
It checked all of the boxes
I
off
like
with the
that.
fact that you said it
what
was
are you
cheap.
gonna do? It's free.
Right, exactly. We're not getting paid for what we do. So that's it. So guys, let's go ahead and jump into it here. And actually, first and foremost, everybody's Thanksgiving good?
It was awesome. I got to see some family that I haven't seen in forever. And it was so cool to be able to like see people that I grew up with like 25 years ago or whatever. And like, it was pretty sweet, man. So it was great. How was your guys' Thanksgiving?
Well, mine was also very nice. I got to eat some good food. It was actually a smaller gathering this year, but what are you gonna do, right? So
Yeah.
But yeah, it was one of those things. We got there early, left a little early too, so I had the rest of the day and all that. That's always nice.
Anybody doing Black Friday shopping or doing a little any of that too?
No,
Get some
not yet.
early Christmas shopping. Ugh.
No, I'm gonna get my Christmas shopping out of the way in like a week or so. So
there you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, no, we didn't really do any like Black Friday shopping or anything like that. We got some like Christmas stuff. That's about it. We, kind of just did stuff like that. You got a few ornaments, and that was like all we did really. But this was my first time in Thanksgiving experiencing multiple Thanksgivings rather than just going to like my mom's. With my girlfriend, and we went to her parents' house, so that was really cool. But I can definitely understand people's hustle and bustle when it comes to that, and having to go to two different places.
Been doing it for years.
Mm-hmm.
You wrap up one, then you got to go travel an hour and a half to the other one, and it's a long day.
Yep, that's where.
And then you finally get home after running around all day and all. You just want to sleep.
Yeah,
right.
That's pretty much how. So, like, kind of what we do for Christmas is, so, like, Thanksgiving, me and my girlfriend actually just split up and just get it done with. But for Christmas, we'll do, like, Christmas Eve at my parents', and then we'll do Christmas Day at hers. So, it's a little busy, but it's not too much in one day.
Yeah, like, you can get some stuff done in that process, right?
So,
there you go.
Yeah.
All right, gents. Well, let's jump into it here and let's talk a little bit about the Blues. They're not playing tonight, are they? No, because they played last night. That's right. Okay. Anyway, so real quick, so for just the update for the fans, we are 12-12-2 for 26 points. Since last session, we are 2-0-1, so 2 wins and 1 overtime loss. We are now 5th in the Central Division, which is 1 spot better than our last session when we were 6th. We are now 12 points behind Minnesota Wild, as the Jets are no longer the number 1 team in the NHL. It is the Minnesota Wild. Who would have thought that? And then we are 10th in the West. That's 2 positions better than last session when we were 12th. We are 19th in the NHL. That is 4 positions better than our ranking, which was 23rd of last session. And we are now tied for the last wild card spot, gaining 3 points in that fight to get to the last wild card spot. So the big question here comes down to Jim
Yeah.
Montgomery. With us so far being under the helm of Jim Montgomery, we are 3-0-1.
Mhm.
Adam, what's your thoughts so far on how the team is playing under Jim Montgomery?
Well, it's still early, but I think knowing his leadership and what I've seen from him before, I think that he has the potential to instill, that proactive offensive mindset into the Blues, and I think that we're starting to see that a little bit more, really emphasizing, taking those opportunities and maintaining the pressure in the offensive zones because we haven't seen that recently. So that shift has really been evident recently, obviously with Kyrou and Thomas as well, because we've been seeing obviously Kyrou, he had a great game. Um, just the other night. So that was great, seeing that offensive, approach. And one area, though, I think that really persists and it's going to be challenging for him, though, is defensively. I'm a little skeptic onto, how we're going to address that. There's susceptibility to the odd man rushes and, our a lot of defensive zone turnovers as well. So I think it's going to be crucial for him to establish, some areas there where he can really step up and, um, you know, really tighten up our defense. Obviously, we have to tighten up our special teams as well. That's been an area that's been very messy. But I think overall, I mean, I've been happy with what I've seen with him so far. Obviously, it's still very early, but I think that with his leadership, um, and he has like, I guess, sort of a sense of like accountability, I guess, is what I would say. And he also has some energy as
Yeah.
well. And I think that if he continues to build on that type of foundation, they have potential. So I will remain cautiously optimistic, but he's going to have he's got his work cut out for him. I'll say that much. You know.
Yeah, and to your point, he's dealing with a lot of young players, mixed in with obviously a few veterans like Shen and stuff like that. But I think that the
Yeah.
accountability is going to be the biggest a part of it, as well as trying to be uplifting to the players, and
Yeah.
not just beating them down to like, hey, you're doing this terribly, and
For
like
sure.
and just hearing the same voice over and over
Because
saying
they're
that,
used
right?
to that because they're like they feel it, they know it, they've been dealing with this for a while, so they need that a little bit of positive reinforcement sometimes, because as
Yeah.
they the lashings will continue and to improve the until morale improves or whatever, something like that. Yeah, obviously that sentiment does not work as we know. So anyway,
Yeah,
obviously if
for
we're able
sure.
to improve morale, you're going to have to be a vision of positivity, bring that energy and change and reinforce, and also work with these guys as well. You know what I mean? Like actually get in there and see where their struggles are and truly figure out, what is it that they're missing? What is it that they need to work on? There's some, I think that he has the technical know-how. Obviously he's been coaching for a long time. He obviously has been very successful in his past. Um, so like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that he can turn things around, hopefully, for us. He's at least our best hope right now.
Yeah. So, OJ, what's your thoughts here? I mean, do you kind of, share the ideology with Adam? Like, what's your thoughts here?
Uh, yeah, I think he's got him playing looser and more of a. Clearly, he wants to focus more on offense. I almost think that Berube and Bannister's offensive game plan is more or less just like let them go out there and be creative.
Yeah,
But
let them do them.
yeah, which I guess it can work if you have really high skill level players. But even then, I think it's obvious that some coaching is needed there. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty happy with it. He certainly seems to have the players motivated and playing a lot better. And especially when they came out against New Jersey, like they were just in the first period, they weren't giving
They
them any
dominated.
space, like any
Yep.
space at all. They were just jumping right onto him right away, and it was fun to watch. So, uh, yeah, I don't know. I think they might be able to be a pretty good team with Montgomery as a head coach. I mean, he could be the difference between them making. Maybe he's unlocked something in them, I guess. Because another thing is you see like some of the younger guys taking like Holloway, for instance, has been playing better since Montgomery came in. He's been producing more anyway. It's also nice to have Broberg back, but Perunovic has kind of been studly since Montgomery. But I mean, I think he's been playing pretty well all year. Um, by the numbers anyway, depending on how much you trust the advanced stats. They say Scott Perunovic is a
Right.
pretty damn good defenseman. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know for sure. We could still be in like the new coach bump era, or he could actually be like that. It could just be like we
Be
just
that
needed
guy,
that
yeah.
guy to unlock our guys. So
Just like
it remains to
Berube
be
in
seen.
2019, and
Yeah,
so to that
yeah.
point, is it the new coach bubble, or is this something that hopefully we're going to be able to see progress into the future and see some progress? But that's the thing about it. I mean, it's only been 4 games now. It's been successful 4 games,
The
3-0-1.
consistency is key. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
we've
again,
seen this
yeah,
before where they'll things will turn around for a little bit and then they go back to the way they were. So consistency is key. I'm happy with what
Absolutely.
we've seen so far, but can we keep it up? Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
That's
question. Only time will tell.
absolutely.
yeah, I'm very interested to see what this looks like, for record after 10 games, after 15, after 20, so on and so forth. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Rather
Same.
than just the small sample size that we have here. But so far, it obviously looks good. And hopefully they can continue to make some progress here. Now that they're moving up, right? So you're no longer in the bottom 20 of the NHL. You're in 19th. You're 10th in the West, and you're tied for the last wild card spot. So just keep pushing. Then
Yep.
who knows what's going to happen? It's still
Yeah,
early
because I
enough
think
in the
we're
season
only
that things
I
can
think
change.
I think the last I checked,
Mm-hmm.
we were only a couple points out of the fourth place spot too, at least in the division. I thought the last I checked. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
I have
let
to
me
look.
double check on
I
that.
think we were close. We were like 2 points behind the Avs. Let me check. I think we were. So basically, we could be there in a
Yeah,
game.
what the hell is going on with the Avs, man? They are
Yeah,
just
dude.
completely tanked this season.
Yeah. So I'm just saying we could easily
Yeah, 2 points behind
overtake
you,
the
right?
Avs. Yeah. So we could easily,
Mhm.
and then by tomorrow we could potentially overtake the Avs. Potentially, you know what I mean? So or tie, I
Yeah.
should say. You know what I mean? Because they're playing the Canes and we're playing tomorrow too. So we could easily tie things up. You know, maybe
Yeah.
that'd be a good feeling, wouldn't
That would be sick if they passed the
it?
Avalanche.
that would be a huge morale boost for us, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah,
And so, okay, there's something I just noticed. So remember, the Winnipeg was the team that set the record with the most
Yeah,
wins, and
yeah,
they are
and
now their
we,
last 10 are 3-7.
yep, they've lost the last 4 games, Josh. Four
Yep.
games in a
Yep.
row lost. They are falling apart right now.
and
Yeah.
what's interesting is I did see that this losing streak has happened at a time when their schedule became much more difficult. So
Yeah.
they've been
It's
playing
like were
some
they just
good
beating up on
teams.
younger players or younger or worse teams or whatever, you know what I mean?
They certainly were, yeah, but I think they also had some injuries, and I think the schedule was kind of tough too, as far as a lot of games, a lot of travel in a short amount of time. But they're still a good hockey team. So it's an impressive win for the Blues, but they also, they weren't going to be 15-1. They weren't going to win at that rate forever.
Yeah, no way, but you just don't you didn't think that this type of flip was going to happen, you know what I mean? But
Yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
it's crazy. They looked
I
like a
mean, you
juggernaut.
never
Now they
know.
look very beatable.
You've seen
Oh
it so
yeah,
much with the Blues. I mean, you have it the positive way in 2019, but in 2018 you had it the negative way, where the Blues got out super hot in like
Start falling
pre-January,
apart.
and then like after January, everything just fell apart, and you
Yep.
trade Paul Stastny
I was
and all
gonna
that
say,
stuff.
look at how it was with the bubble in 2020 as well. So same thing. We were
Yeah,
hot, and then we just fell apart in the bubble.
Well,
that's
if
what
it
I'm
wasn't
saying.
for COVID, I really do believe that the St. Louis Blues, not only, I truly
We're on
firmly believe
track,
we would
man.
have a second cup. I think that we potentially could have had a third, but I really think this team looks completely different because I think that Petrangelo is still on this team if it wasn't for COVID.
It
You know what I
was.
mean? That was
That's
just
true.
really
I
bad
agree.
situational what
Yeah,
happened
I'm
there.
just saying that was an
Yeah,
example though where we were
Oh yeah.
so hot. Things were. I mean, they couldn't have been better. You know what I mean? We came off of the 2019 season looking so great. You know what I mean? We brought everybody back damn near, and we were just looking so good, and
hmm
everything was riding high. So, and then
yep,
obviously it all went to shit. Yeah,
yeah,
it is
exactly.
what it
So
is.
we'll see what the Jets do. I mean, I still think they're a pretty good team,
Yeah,
so they'll probably start stringing some more wins together as the season goes on. But
for
you
sure.
know, doesn't mean the Blues can't catch them either. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious whether you guys noticed it or not, but like, especially in like the Athletic, which I'm starting to think about unsubscribing from them because they post some trash these days. But they had like an article literally already saying, well, these teams basically can't make the playoffs now because it's statistically unlikely. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Based off how they started. And of course, the Blues are one of those teams. It's like there's so much season left, and we're in a hurry to write people off of like statistical likelihoods based on past seasons records. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like that's
Yeah.
I don't know. If you think the team's good and underperforming, there's a lot of season left for them to easily make the playoffs. But rather than providing that analysis, let's just go on the absolute most surface level. Oh, well, teams with this win percentage through this date rarely make the playoff.
Whatever. I don't
Come
even
on,
care
dude.
about
Why
that.
even
It's
write that
ridiculous.
article?
I
Why
don't even
even
care about
write
that. I don't even care
that?
about that. I'm looking about what's actually happening on the ice, and the fact is
Yeah.
to basically to go back to what we were talking about earlier is the fact that I'm actually seeing improvements in our puck control. We have those quicker transitions.
Yeah.
We're actually
Yeah.
have a more aggressive strategy. With our offense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's evident. I mean, look at our shot totals in
And the
general.
and the Edmonton guys look stupid good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
So
sorry, but that was a hell of a pickup by Doug Armstrong. There's a lot of
yeah.
people that were like, oh, they need to fire Armstrong. So much so that it is honestly brilliant what they did is they sold it to these idiots as like, oh, we're getting rid of him. We're going to put Steen in charge. But like, he's just going to be president of hockey ops. He's going upstairs. Like, he's still going to be overseeing everything.
Yeah.
Armstrong is, I mean. So
Yeah.
like, I don't know. But yeah, it's one
It
of those
makes
things.
space though with the fans, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a certain group of people that are like, oh man, he's like the worst GM ever or something like. Just completely forget everything he's done, and we're just gonna be like, okay, because the last two seasons were bad, he's trash. Like,
Yeah,
oh
let's not forget that he is the GM of Team Canada and has for the
yeah,
past like 8 years. Like, come
Yep.
on.
yeah,
You know
and
what I
he
mean?
made mistakes. He
Well,
definitely made mistakes.
Yeah,
It's
of
fair
course
to
he made mistakes,
criticize
but
some of the things he did, but to be like, oh, he's
but to
terrible.
completely tarnish his whole legacy,
but
I
that goes
agree.
but that
Yeah,
goes back to what I brought up earlier about COVID. Everyone wants to go after him for letting Petrangelo leave. Bro, he could his hands were tied. He signed Falk at the beginning of the season, which at the time everyone was praising him, saying that was a very good deal. And then COVID happened, and then all of a sudden the
Yeah.
payroll disappeared.
Yep. Yep.
And
And we
Petrangelo
yeah,
had a very
the
certain
cap.
expectation of what
Yep.
that was going to look like, and he wanted guarantees because he saw that the world was like on fire, with COVID clear. But in the same year, he also saw his good buddy Jay Bouwmeester die on the fucking ice.
Yeah.
not
So like
die,
it
but
literally changed.
Well, he
Well,
did. I mean, he came
his
back right
heart
away.
stopped. His
Yeah.
heart stopped
yeah,
for a
They
good
had to
like
shock
for a
him
good
back.
15 seconds,
Yeah.
right?
no,
So
But the point.
technically,
yeah,
okay, never mind. Go
yeah, no,
ahead.
so you're right. So technically he didn't die of OJ, but you understand where I'm coming from, right? So like it
Right.
changed his perception of like again, like I was around the Blues at the time. I had a lot of friends that were like in like the organization, and obviously I won't say where they're at or names or anything like that because what they told me was really more in confidence. But they said that Petrangelo in these meetings, his whole identity changed after COVID. like what he was like a lot more like, okay, nope, I want these guarantees. I'm not just about money. I'm not about like the long term. I want guarantees. And that was something that Armstrong is never done because he's always said it feels like it gives the power more so to the players than the ownership.
Of course.
And
There's
so
always
like
that gonna be
again,
a
sometimes it
struggle, but
works, but sometimes it doesn't. And congrats for him for getting out of the cup in Vegas. But again, for people that blame the entire situation of Doug Armstrong, it's just not fair. It was just a victim
Yeah.
of circumstance at that point. You know what
Well,
I mean?
yeah,
Really
because
was.
you also had the flat cap. That was a big deal for trying to keep that
Yeah.
team together. I mean, there's no way that
Yes.
you could see that coming, managing your team going into that season,
And
right?
that's the
Like,
reason why he gave Falk the extension, because he knew that, okay, with what they were projecting to be, and they announced it, they wrote it to the NHL front offices. This is what the salary cap will look like this year, and then they retracted it because COVID. And
exactly,
so like
exactly.
essentially it's like, buying a house and like, oh, I have this, like a high paying job or whatever, I make this money so I can afford this expensive house, and then losing that job. Well,
Hmm.
oh shit, now I don't have the money to pay for it. You know what I mean?
right, right.
So
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was, and it was something you couldn't possibly expect, like
yeah.
to happen either. It's definitely
Yeah.
a weird situation. So.
Uh,
But it is what it is.
Anyways, let's talk a little bit more now, actually about GMs and stuff like that, and talk about some trades. Let's transition to our second topic here and talk a little bit about the Cardinals. And a lot of trade rumors going around right now.
Yeah.
Around the Cardinals, specifically around Arenado. But Adam, I'm going to
And
start with
Dunkley
you here.
too.
What's your thoughts here on any of these trades, and do you see any of these
Yeah.
trades happening?
Well, I mean, obviously Arenado, I think he's still got a contract going through 2027, which is about 74 mil remaining. And he's been, he already made it apparent that he's willing to waive his no trade clause as well. Uh, and
Yeah, which is real
anyone
sad.
has, and obviously, if anyone has already seen the news, he's made it so clearly not, he hasn't veiled it very, it's pretty obvious. I'll just say that he hasn't veiled it very, very kindly at all, because he posted some stuff to Instagram, and it was basically making notion of being a Dodger. So obviously he wants to go to LA, because who doesn't want to go to LA? Of course, they can. That franchise is worth billions of dollars because they can just defer everything. So obviously he wants to go play in LA, but
And
the
he
real
is from
question,
Cali, like grew up
for
with the
sure,
Dodgers, like, and stuff like that. I can
yeah. The
understand that. I
question
also
is
understand
though
your
is like,
point.
does LA really need him, and what would they do with him?
No.
And they'd obviously have. There's really not a need for him per se. And then the next question is what do we need as well, right? So the thing is obviously with this we're looking to dump some salary for sure, because we need to offload the salary, and we need to pick up some future assets as well in the process. Um, you know, there's a few teams that come to mind. Obviously, like the Blue Jays, for example, they need to strengthen their infield as well, so it could provide them some stability. Maybe we can get some minor, prospects out of the deal. Obviously, a lot of this comes to offloading the salary. I'm just looking at like who could potentially, what would make sense, because I don't think LA makes sense. I don't think that they need him. There's some teams here that come to mind. Obviously, Toronto, the Yankees as well. They're looking to bolster their infield a bit as well. And it looks like there's even some possibilities around the Red Sox as well. They want to potentially exchange some substantial contracts going on their side as well, from what I've seen. So yeah,
Yeah.
I don't
And
know, man.
that's going to be the
It's
problem.
curious.
Yeah. And see, the problem with this, I feel like the Cardinals payroll is going to start shrinking. Like, we're already looking at that
Oh,
one,
it
right?
100% is. That's what this is all about. It's all about shrinking that
Yeah.
payroll. There's no doubt about it. That's what that trade is shrinking
Yeah.
that payroll, because they have about $74 million left on that contract.
Yeah. But the problem with it is Arenado has an incredible amount of value.
Yeah,
So you
I
can't
agree.
just let him go for like one prospect. You know what I mean?
I
Like, you
agree.
can't.
But
So
what are
you're
you
going
going
to
to get
have
for
to
it realistically? Because
exactly.
honestly, I think it puts us into a very poor situation because it's like we are. Let's face it, the Cardinals are more. We're not going to come out winners on this. I really don't.
I mean, yeah.
I really don't
But
see this.
if I'm the Cardinals organization, I mean, it's very obvious that Arenado wants to be in Dodger blue, right?
Well,
But
of
I'm going to
course he
tell him
does.
unless they meet our demands, absolutely not. We'll put you wherever the fuck you want to go. You do have
Yeah,
no
we
trade
still have him
costs, so you
locked
can
up for
sign off on
we
everything. But if you say no, then you're playing baseball in St. Louis.
in St. Louis,
Sorry.
yeah, for the next 3 years. Yeah.
I would make it very clear to him that like that is going to happen. Now, to be fair, in Arenado, there were promises that were made to him when he signed with us and to sign the extension and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that, and those were clearly not met. And I really do believe it played into not only his behavior but his playing last year. I
Yeah.
really feel like he just kind of stopped caring because we were just losing like crazy. We didn't make the moves that I think that the front organization said that they were going to make, and he's just like really you guys just lied to me, and so he just didn't care. And
Yeah.
statistically I think it shows.
I
So
disagree with
I
Adam. I
don't know.
think they made the
I don't-
moves that Arenado wanted them to make. You remember how he's bitching about how they had too many young players and it's hard to win with a bunch of young guys and shit like that? Well, they went out and they got veteran pitchers and all that. They just still weren't very good. So I don't think from that perspective he feels like they lied to him. But I do think
I
that
don't think that's what he
I
wanted. I
do
don't think he
think that to
wanted.
get him to opt back in, they did tell him they were going to be competitive, and and they're not going to be now. So yeah, like the thing is, they should trade him if they don't want to like tarnish their reputation to other free agents. That's my opinion, and so I agree with Adam. They're probably going to have to lose the trade on it because everybody knows he wants out. But I still think they got to get rid of him.
Yeah, and so my thing is, so to your point, OJ, if that's what he wanted veterans. He's also not wanting a 36-year-old Lance Lynn. Like, you know what I mean? He's not like, come on, like nobody. All right, I need to get off that subject because that just like I don't believe that the moves that we made last year were the moves that were
Just
needed to make the team competitive.
Like,
I just
I
relax.
don't.
think he wanted veteran players. You know, like Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn fit the bill. He may not be the best evaluator of what a baseball team needs to be successful, but he says
Yeah,
they couldn't win with their players they had, so they went out and got some. I'm just saying, they had to find
yeah.
somebody that wants to come here too, because not everybody wants to come to the Cardinals when they hear that they basically don't have staff to help you work on your craft. You know what I mean?
No, and I 100% understand that too. You're playing in a smaller market, and if you're a bigger name, New York or LA, they're going to give you more money. You know what I mean? And
Of
that's the
course
whole
they
thing
are.
about this is, truthfully, the MLB has come down to money. That's all that matters. I mean, again, we
Well, of
talked about
course it
this
is.
yesterday, Adam.
That's number
The
one. That's
Dodgers
number
have,
one. Yeah.
yeah, the
Always
Dodgers
money.
have $1 billion
Yeah.
of
And
deferred
defer.
money over
Yeah.
just 7 players. $1
Yep.
billion for deferred.
Yeah.
And it's going to be
Yep.
all the way up until 2048
I,
that they're paying
the
that off. That's
I,
horseshit. I'm sorry. Like, pardon
well,
my
the
language.
moment
That's horseshit.
the moment that I saw what they did with the whole Otani contract, I knew that was it because I knew that they
Yeah.
were going to exploit it for the rest of time with it. There's no doubt about it. So of course they
Well,
did.
And that's why
I will
baseball needs a
say,
fucking salary cap.
I mean, look at what the Edmund deal was. You know, they just announced that 5 year deal with Edmund for 74 mil, and also, you know what I mean, and they deferred all that money.
well, that's the thing. Lots of teams do deferrals. Even Arenado has some of his money that's on his contract for the
But like
Cardinals
basically, they
deferred.
deferred the whole damn
Yeah,
thing.
what they
Yeah,
did
but
with
that's the
Otani
biggest thing
was
about it.
extreme.
Yes.
That's
It
the
was
problem.
Yeah.
crazy, dude. It was like a
It's the
mill. There
Bobby
was
Bonita
nothing.
deal and done in 2023. You know what I mean?
It was
Like,
so
here's the thing
extreme.
about this, right? We
It's
talked
worse
about
than
this.
that. They're paying him like $2 million a year, and that's it on like
It
a
it is.
$700 million.
It's so jarring because the fact that it doesn't even make sense. Like it doesn't even seem fair, even in the
Yeah.
least. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not.
It's
And
like,
they already have more money than God. Plus, now no
yeah.
one cares if they get paid by him or not, apparently.
And
So,
let's face it. And let's face it. The luxury tax to them is like, wait, we don't give a shit.
yeah. Well, that's what I was talking about before. The
I
luxury
mean,
tax widens the gap between the rich teams
yeah,
and poor teams because rich teams
yeah,
can blow right through it and deal with it. And poor teams are like, well, I really
You
can't go over
you
that.
know what? Pretty soon, LA Dodger fans are gonna have to pay to go to the bathroom to the stadium. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you know
But
what?
here's the
They deserve it.
You know what I mean? I
They
mean,
gotta
for
have
real.
some adversity to deal
I mean,
with.
how are they going to afford this long term? It's ridiculous. But I mean, but that's the thing that kind of that obviously they're looking at the long game. They're looking at building a dynasty. They're going to invest all this money here and now. They know that they're obviously going to be able to defer all this money, but they also know if they do this and it proves to be fruitful, that their team and the franchise will be worth that plus its weight in gold at the end of the
Yeah,
day. So you know what I
yeah,
mean. So they can easily pay all that off.
yeah. I mean,
It'll
think
be
about
a
all the
drop in
great
the
Yeah.
bucket.
publicity they get in Japan now because of
Yeah.
this. The
And so
Cardinals should be
it's a
doing
long
that
term
shit.
investment for them, which makes sense. Why they're deferring all this because they know that they're going to be able to make back plus so much more as long as they can, as long as that actually proves to be fruitful, which obviously up to this point, they got a ring, but they had to pay handsomely for it. So
Yeah, dear Lord.
at least I can say for the Cardinals that at least while I was alive, those teams, well, hell, I can say just in general, but I know at least while I was alive and you all were alive and watching us get those rings, those were some very uh mediocre team. I mean, I shouldn't say mediocre, but like the teams were not heavily paid for, you know what I mean? In that sense, we did not have a heavy payroll when it comes to
I
those
mean,
wins at
that's
all.
that's because we
Well,
had, superstars and they performed as superstar level, but then our role players were also able to elevate their
Right.
play.
it
Right.
You know what
also
I
So
mean?
at
depends
least I
what you
can
mean by
say,
like super heavy because like I want to say they got up to like eighth one of those years. That was like Walt
Yeah.
Jocketty era. So, but
Yeah.
so they weren't doing as much with homegrown players at that point. But yeah, so I mean they've spent in the past more than now certainly, but
well, yeah, but they're getting so cheap now, it's just ridiculous.
yeah, yeah, and so I'm
They
kind of
But
they
here,
basically laugh on our faces, fans, and say, "Yeah, they'll continue showing up. We don't have to invest anything in the team."
see, but
Well,
here's the thing, right? Okay, so we talked about this last week.
yeah,
We talked about it with the MLS and the fact that, like, again, there's a salary cap there, and
yep,
is it good for MLS to break that in so there is no salary cap so we can compete with other leagues and stuff like that?
yeah,
What is happening in baseball right now is the exact reason why I don't want that to break in the MLS is because we're going to end up with baseball becoming La Liga, where one or two teams are going to dominate the league, and that's already happening now. New York, New York Yankees, New York Mets, San Diego Padres, LA Dodgers, all those teams are dominating the payroll and then there's other teams that don't even they just are always going to lose in these situations. You're going to have a one-off situation where a smaller team is able to win and go from there. They'll win the World Series. But if this continues to be allowed, all this deferred payment, not worried about a salary cap, I can
you're going to
sign
kill
you
the
and
league.
defer you off for $2 billion. Who cares? That's not my money. That's the ownership. 30 years down the road, that's their money. Who gives a shit about it? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
yeah.
Like
Well,
it's
but at that
going to
point,
be
they'll
a
be able to pay it
problem.
off, though, Josh. That's the point. Is they will be able to pay it because the
Exactly
fact
right.
that they will have the money that they will reap back in from building such a dynasty. It will pay for itself.
Well, it's
You know
not
what I
just
mean?
that. They take so the way it's structured with Otani's thing, they apparently have to put it in some sort of investment vehicle or something like that. So I think they put like 400 mil in to some investment vehicle that's supposed to be the value of 700 mil by the time it matures.
So it's
Something
like the
like that.
lottery deal. Like you can either
Yeah,
take the one-time lump sum, or we can defer it over, or we can give it to you over 30 years. But basically, what they do is they invest the money for you and then give you annual payments. In essence, it's one of those
yeah, I think
deals,
it's
so to
something
speak.
like that. But
Yeah, yeah.
it's
Because
so
basically, it's like what the money would be, including inflation, blah 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 blah, but it's deferred. So
right.
they put it in those investments. Yeah, it
And
makes sense.
Otani gets 700 million ultimately, and the Dodgers
In the
save
end,
300 million
yeah,
basically.
you're right because technically speaking, it's just money invested and it's making money on the interest itself, so to speak. You know
Yeah,
what I
but
Yeah,
mean?
not to
yeah.
mention all the money that the Dodgers are making off of Otani, period. Not just when it comes to jersey sales and obviously ticket sales,
Well,
but
yeah,
all the endorsements he's getting. You
tons
know
of
what I mean?
endorsements.
Like yeah, all the and
Well,
this is so listen, as much as I hate the Dodgers and I hate how they're winning right now, you cannot blame them. It's incredibly smart. It's
Well,
like
of course
Disney, it's
not.
like Apple, and the evil empire, so to speak, when it comes to the marketing and stuff like that. So this is written into Atani's clause. If as long as there is no direct conflict, if he's in a commercial, say like Subway, he can wear
Mhm.
his Dodgers uniform.
Yep.
Where you can't do that for a lot of like, so the for example, the like for the State Farm commercials for Patrick Mahomes and Travis
Mhm.
Kelsey and Big Red, right? Andy Reid. When they're
Yeah.
in it, they never have they're wearing red, but
Yeah, but they're
they don't
never the
have
Chiefs.
anything that
And it's the
there's
same with
nothing
hockey
branded with
too.
the Chiefs.
Yeah,
Exactly
I've
right.
seen.
But
Yeah, it's like the
a
car
lot of
show
that has
commercials are the same way. Yeah, because it's
exactly.
not
And
the
so like
brand.
Atani, they have in a New Balance commercial, since that is like he's one of their what is it, their brands ours or whatever, since they're a star
Sure.
athlete. But there is a direct conflict there with New Balance and obviously Nike and stuff like that. A lot of the other in Rawlings, a lot of the other
Yep.
manufacturers for MLB. But for Subway, he'd be able to do whatever he wants to. You know what I mean? Like he can
Right.
do it for like car dealerships, like like
Yep.
anything that he wanted to do, he'd be able to do it, and that's brilliant because then again, it just continues to remind you, oh, Atani, that's awesome, and there's the LA Dodger symbol. You know what I mean? It
Yep.
just puts it in the back of your mind the entire time. So you can't blame them for doing what they are doing. You just hate them for doing it. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's they're everyone's trying to survive because they know that baseball's dying. So they're doing
Yeah.
what they have to do to be able to survive in this. Because let's face it, there are teams that are tanking, and well, I mean, Oakland was the first to basically uh, falter, and then now they're hoping that they can try to make a resurgence, so to speak, in LA or in Las Vegas. But still, you know, but there's a lot of teams that are collapsing and they're losing the revenue, including the Cardinals. That whole Bally's thing really hurt us, and we're
Well,
only going
that's
to get
in
it's really
hockey and
hurting them.
basketball too.
Yeah,
No, I'm saying that's the exact situation. There's
yeah,
NBA teams and hockey teams that also had
hurting.
Valley, and they're all
Yep.
losing revenue too. It's not the collapse of the sport; it's the collapse of
No,
that model of
it
media.
is. But it's
No,
a
there's
collective
more
thing.
going into it for baseball. Yeah,
There is.
like
It's a collective thing
viewership's
in
down.
baseball. It is
Yeah.
because baseball, let's face it, is not a popular sport anymore. It's not. It's
Oh yeah, go look in Asia then.
okay. I'm talking about
Jeez.
MLB here in the U.S. It is not. It is losing its.
Yeah.
Uh,
And
you know what I'm
to
talking about,
that
Josh.
point,
It's
hold
losing
on.
its
Yeah,
flair.
yeah, and Adam, let me
I don't want to
address
get
that
into
real
that
quick with
argument
OJ.
here. I'm just talking about
Yeah,
that.
because you're right that it's very unpopular. OJ, you're right that it's very popular in Japan, but all they have in Japan really is baseball. Their soccer leagues are a joke, even though they do have some very good
Yeah,
players that
it's
play in the
popular
Asian
in
leagues and stuff
Japan,
like that.
Korea, and now I think Taiwan. Like basically, it's
Mhm.
spreading through there. I think it was even was it Cambodia or Vietnam that I saw a thing about too now.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
basically
exactly.
Asia loves baseball. So
Well, of
Yeah, and
course.
because that's their one sport. Where in America you have football, you have basketball, you have hockey. You
Yeah,
mean like
soccer
you
now.
not like you
Golf.
have so many more than what the national pastime of baseball, and less players are American players now too. And that's
Yeah.
not to say that American viewers are not watching it because of that. I hope to God they're not watching it because of
No,
that.
but the
But it's
sport in
just
general is losing
yeah.
its luster. Americans, let's
Yeah,
face it, and it
what I
has
mean
been
by
for
that
a long.
is American kids are like not growing up wanting to be baseball players. They're wanting. I mean, you got a lot of players. You see this story a lot, especially in college and stuff like that. Like that Mahomes thing, where Mahomes gets drafted, but he also like goes and plays college football and ends up going to the NFL because there's more money involved. Of
Of
course,
course.
totally makes sense, right? But
well, there's
there's
more
a lot of
money
kids
up
that are doing
front.
that now.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah, you're right.
you get paid
You
quicker
know,
in the
It,
NFL, but
the
you
point,
probably
the
if
yeah,
you're good, you make more in MLB.
but the
Oh,
yeah,
point is,
obviously
definitely can.
TV
the point
also.
is, it's more than the getting it back to the point of it's more than just the balancing. It's a collective
Yeah,
whole in
yeah,
general,
yeah.
and in MLB is what I was making that point in general. So it's hurting a lot of these teams, and obviously that this is LA's way, and I know that these other teams, they're doing the best they can, and obviously they're succeeding. But there's a lot of smaller cities and a lot of small organizations that are they're failing, or they're on their way, they're downturn. It may not be failing,
Yeah.
maybe that's a bigger term than I should be using, but they're they're shrinking.
Well, I will say I'm a huge proponent of a salary cap and floor in baseball because that is why it's not as popular, or that's why it's losing popularity in the U.S. is because most people don't feel like their team has a legitimate chance of competing, and a
Right.
lot of teams legitimately are not trying to compete to win. Like you're talking about collapsing in Oakland, like it's not like people stopped liking baseball altogether in Oakland. It's that they didn't want to go to fucking Oakland games because the owner was so cheap. And like by the end of it, he was literally just Stan Kroenke. He was like,
Yep.
"We're taking the team to get this. We
Well, of
want to
course,
move it."
everybody's ready to say they were screaming, "Sell the team!" Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but my point is, it's not just that. It's like you look in Cincinnati, Pittsburgh. There's all
Mhm.
these teams where they're just suckling on the teat of revenue sharing, and they
Yep.
make money without a single person walking into the fucking stadium all season.
Yeah.
So they're like, that's good enough for me. But if you had a salary cap and floor, they'd have to spend money. And I mean, if you set those properly, like in a proportion
Right.
to revenue,
Correct.
then
Yeah, of
owners would
course.
be forced to spend to at least meet the cap floor. And I think that would create a healthier environment for all involved.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
And
I agree with that.
it would also it would move some of the wealth from like the super high end players to the
Yes. That's
middle
what I was just about to
journeyman as
say.
well.
Yeah.
Like you heard about the middle class of baseball essentially falling out for a while now, and it's because of how their collective bargaining is set up. If they
Hmm.
would just get a cap and a floor, you'd see a lot more journeyman guys get paid. You'd see free agency would be more exciting because there'd be a lot more movement because teams would value the journeyman more at that point. Uh, so yeah, I think that would solve a lot of issues as well.
I agree with you because, like, you take a look at it, and the New York Mets had the number one payroll in all of baseball, $314 million, and the least was, of course, Oakland. I'm still going to call them Oakland for now.
They are.
$62 million. 60.
Yeah.
That's literally one fifth
Yeah,
of of what the Mets had, right?
yeah,
So,
Yeah.
to your point, if you do it responsibly with a floor and obviously the cap, that
yeah,
is when you're going to start, seeing some stuff be able to balance itself out. And
Right.
that's the hope.
Right.
yeah.
Agree.
Finally, start to see some teams competing that weren't competing before and all that stuff.
Yeah.
That's what's most important is the parity. Like people have to feel like their team is actually trying to win and actually has a chance to win. Otherwise,
Hmm.
they're like, why watch if you're not even trying? Why invest my money
Yeah.
and time into
Well, look
this?
at what's going on with the Cardinals, and that's what's happening here too. So, same
Well, I
thing.
wouldn't say that. I mean, did you
Well,
guys
it
see all
is
the
because there's
hirings they
viewership
made?
is I'm gonna say viewership and attendance is way down because obviously we're just not a contender anymore
Well,
because
no,
we've literally
that I
settled
agree
for
with.
they literally settled for if we get into a playoff first playoff round maybe that's okay, or maybe if we win the division we'd be okay with that.
Yeah,
That's what
they're
you get.
they're not trying to win world titles. They're
No,
trying
they're
to
not
win
close to
potentially the
showing that.
Central Division.
They
That's
they
it.
have
Well,
they
That's
don't take it seriously at all.
I don't agree with that at all. Actually, I mean, if you pay attention to the minor league system moves and stuff they've been making, they're like actually revamping their whole development system. And you can win World Series without spending a fuck ton of money. You develop good players. There's different ways to go about it. It's all that matters is how do you get the good players on your team. I don't really care how you do it.
Well, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about some trades and before we transition here and talk a little bit about the college football playoffs. But OJ, because we obviously got off topic and we talked a lot about baseball, but do you see like the Cardinals making any trades, or is there anybody besides Arenado that you can see being on the trade block?
Well, Helsley, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, if you're rebuilding, if you're revamping your farm system, and they've admitted that their farm system is trash as far as developing players, but they went out
Mhm.
and they hired a bunch of different coordinators and shit. You know how they've got like performance directors and shit like this, all these
Yeah.
positions that other teams have had, and the Cardinals are just like, we don't really need that. We don't even need a roving coach, like. But they're hiring all these people right now, so they're not expecting the fruits of that to really come about probably for another couple of years. So yeah, in the meantime, I guess you might as well trade guys. I mean, I wouldn't trade
Yeah.
Helsley necessarily, unless you can get a reasonable offer for him, because I still kind of think the team can compete. It just depends whether some of their young guys can actually get fixed. So that really depends on their internal evaluation. But I still think Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman can be good. I think they had a terrible hitting coach last year who they're going to replace. And I know for a fact that they didn't have sufficient instruction to allow them to really flourish. And they seem to be fixing that. So if you get some of these guys that you expected to be good and all of a sudden they are good again, then maybe you could have a team that might be capable of something.
Yeah, and maybe you might be able to turn a little bit of a corner. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be better to just have Helsley. It really depends what the market is for him. The main reason I'm for getting Arenado out there is because, like I said, I'm almost certain that they had to make some promises about competing to him in order to get him to opt back into the contract. And so I wouldn't want to renege on that. I wouldn't want to be the ones that stuck him with a shitty situation. You know what I mean? Because it's going to be hard to get guys to come to your team. So.
Yeah, we don't know what was said behind closed doors, and it makes it harder to speculate when it comes to stuff like that, right? So yeah. All right, the one that I'll ask you guys real quick, just a real quick thought on it before we move on. What's your guys' thoughts on Contreras, maybe?
Trading him?
Yeah, like trying to find a trade partner for him. Like, what's your guys' thought process?
It's not going to happen. He said he doesn't want to go. I think he has a full no trade, so if he doesn't want to go anywhere, you can't move him. So
yeah, I didn't think he had
he's
no
got
trade.
A 5-year, $87.5 million contract with no trade clause. So
so then never mind. Yeah, okay, so then okay,
yeah, it's pretty much impossible.
Yeah, he's gonna be playing first base for us for a while.
Yeah, right. You're 100% right there. All right, guys. Well, let's transition here and let's talk a little bit about some college football playoffs in the CFP. Or what that is, the CFP, sorry. But we're gonna talk about the rankings. So I got a quick update here for the rankings. This is the week 15 ranking, so it is right before championship week, which obviously is right around the corner. So these rankings play very heavily into teams that will be in the playoffs, teams that wouldn't be in the playoffs. So for anybody that does not know, college football playoff is expanded from 4 teams to 12 teams. There will be 5 automatic bids, and those 5 automatic bids go to the top 5 conference winners. So it pretty much guarantees SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12. Like the top 4 are going to get into it, and the Mountain West looks like they will be able to take the other one this time around. But let's talk a little bit real quick of the rankings, and then we'll get into like our thoughts on it. So number 1, we have Oregon. They are 12-0. Texas, who is number 2, 11-1. Penn State, 11-1 at number 3. The Independent, Notre Dame at number 4 at 11-1. Georgia's 10-2 at 5. Ohio State's at 6 at 10-2. Tennessee's at 7 with 10-2. SMU has made a comeback here. They're the ACC leaders right now. They are in 8 with 11-1. Indiana is 11-1. They are 9th. The Mountain West, Boise State representation there. They are 10th at 11-1. Alabama is 9-3 and 11th in the nation. That right now is currently sitting in your your playoff bracket. I'll just add a few more here, just for the sake of conversation when we get to it. Miami dropped 6 positions. They were at 6 last week. They are 12. Obviously they're 10-2 out of ACC. Ole Miss is 13th and 9-3. The SEC, South Carolina, they're 9-3 at 14. Clemson is 9-3 at 17. Arizona State, which right now is leading the Big 12 charge, that will be the 5th automatic bid for the conference. And it's really going to be Arizona State or Iowa State, because Arizona State's 15th, Iowa State is 16th. They both play each other in the Big 12 championship. So pretty much the winner of that will move on to the playoffs. And Missouri finishes right now at 19th, and a 9-3 record. So, just gonna turn it over to you. I'll start with you, OJ. What's your thoughts here on this ranking? Do you feel that somebody got screwed? Do you, feel that somebody didn't drop enough? What's your thoughts?
Let's see. So I'm looking at some of the teams out. Man, it's hard for me to really say. Like personally, I think Miami should be much lower than 12, but that's because
Agree.
they realistically lost a third game. But the refs, I think, were paid. Like I don't know if you guys saw that one, but it was early in the year. It was against like Virginia
Yeah,
Tech
the
or
overtime
something,
game. Yep. Yep.
where they won on it was like Virginia Tech or something. They won on a final touchdown. Literally would have been a walk-off touchdown. Guy goes up and catches the ball in the end zone and falls down into a mass of people. It's ruled a touchdown on the field. They review it and somehow they overturn it with no evidence to overturn it. No reason to really think the guy didn't even catch the ball. Like it, you know what I mean? For some reason, they overturned that kept Miami undefeated for a little while. But they should have a third loss. And there's another game I've heard people talking about that I haven't seen myself where they're like, oh, it probably should have been a fourth loss. So I think Miami's like a terrible team. They probably should be much lower than the top 12.
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah, I really
And that's
think
actually, I'm glad you brought them up because here's the thing is a lot of people have been complaining about this today. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm looking at Miami's record. They beat Florida at Florida. That started the season, right? Okay, great. Florida was not ranked.
No, sorry. That was Florida.
It's Florida, yeah.
Yeah.
They did beat Florida State at home, which is trash this year. They have
Yeah.
A&M, Ball State, South Florida, Virginia Tech. That's the game you're referring to, OJ.
Mm.
California, Louisville, Duke. Then they lost to Georgia Tech. Then they beat Wake Forest. Then they lost at Syracuse. They're a two-loss team. They haven't faced a fucking ranked opponent this season, and people are complaining that they are now out of the CFP. Yeah, that's because they were pre-ranked 6th for some reason, and they never even had a prove-it game. Like, I get it. They're out of the ACC. They were decent last year. They have a decent quarterback, but that's all they have. If it's not for Ward, you don't have anything. Sorry, but you don't.
Yeah. No, that's kind of what I'm getting at is
Yeah.
there's some teams on here like I'd have to look at Indiana's schedule, but I think that's probably pretty weak. I know SMU's schedule is pretty weak. Like there's teams in the top 10 here that are there just because they didn't lose many, if any, games, and all they played was like bad teams. So it's like
and their conference too, right? SMU, for example,
ACC is trash.
they have actually, but it's not great competition, but they do have 2 ranked wins against Pitt, who is 18th, and Louisville. And that was at Louisville, 22nd. Their one loss was to BYU, which has been ranked for a very long time. And I think they're currently ranked now.
Yeah, they're number. Yeah, BYU's ranked 10.
My issue with that is
no, they're ranked 18th.
I quibble with those teams.
They are 18th. My bad.
They were ranked 10 last week.
I wouldn't rank Louisville anywhere. I don't think the playoff committee did either. I don't see Louisville ranked at all on the CFP.
No. Right. No, so that was the CFP, and that was at the time. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Everybody bitches about Mizzou being ranked 19 without having a ranked win. Well, we beat multiple teams that were ranked at the time. If we want to use that standard, I thought we couldn't use that standard.
By the way,
I'm sorry.
So I think we talked about it here before, but I absolutely fucking love the fact that people are like literally. I cannot believe that we moved down 4 spots when we beat Vanderbilt in OT. Yeah. And then they're just like, yeah, but it's Vanderbilt. You guys suck. Then Vanderbilt beats Alabama, and they go, oh, man, Vanderbilt's actually a pretty good team.
Must be pretty good.
Like, you screwed us over. Alabama what the fuck? Yeah, you beat Alabama. Like, what are you? Are we kidding me? And they moved down only 4 spots, just like us. I'm like, damn team. Does that mean we're better than Alabama? And then the next week, Alabama blanked us.
Destroyed by Alabama, yeah.
Yeah, I know. But that's the whole point, though. It's just, oh, God.
Well, I will also say that Mizzou should have won that Vanderbilt game by 9 in regulation if they just had a field goal kicker that could hit field goals.
Yeah.
It's literally like if you're trying to say that a team is good or bad based on their field goal kicker, then I don't know what to tell you. But, like, yeah, lots of people like to leave out a lot of context when it comes to Mizzou, but they have ample room for context when it comes to, like, Miami's of the world, you know? But it's because
Yeah.
they're named programs. That's the thing with the Mizzou has to break through the fact that they're not a named program right now.
Yeah.
They just that's how
Yeah.
it is. I mean, when you're dealing with subjective rankings like this, you have to make it so they can't deny you. That's just how
Yeah,
it is.
you have to get the benefit of the doubt first. You know what I mean? And you take a look at our three losses.
Yeah.
Our three losses are at Texas A&M, who were ranked at the time at 25th. Yeah, we got slaughtered by them. At Alabama, who was ranked 15th at the time, again got slaughtered at them. At South Carolina, who was ranked 21. You know what I mean? So they're all three
Yeah.
road losses in the SEC. That's so fucking difficult to do. Alabama is ranked in the top. And again, this is so objective, like the hardest places to play. It just like what you see in like NCAA football on like for Xbox and stuff, right? But there is like a consensus thing of what it is. It's so hard to say, but the average for Alabama is that they are in the top 5, that they are the second or the third hardest place to play. Texas A&M, they're in the top 15. South Carolina, they're also in the top 15. We went into very hostile environments, and honestly, we should have won the game in South Carolina. And if we would have won that game, things would have changed, I think, because I don't believe we're in the playoffs, because they would have been like, oh yeah, they're a two loss team, but you know what I mean? Like that's how it always feels like with
Yeah.
Mizzou. But
Yeah.
regardless, it
Yeah.
would have really put some pressure on them.
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, what I mean is, if they're gonna get in the playoffs, they got to leave no doubt. And
Yes,
they didn't do that
exactly
this
right.
year, so it's just it's a shame. But what are you gonna do? But yeah, there's definitely some teams that people have a love affair with just because. Like, I'm trying to see if you'll give me a moment. I'm
Good.
gonna look at Boise State's schedule. So they played Georgia Southern. They lost to Oregon. Then they beat Portland State, Washington State, Utah State, Hawaii, UNLV. That's a good team this year. San Diego
This
State,
year.
Nevada, San Jose State, Wyoming. They beat Wyoming by 4. And then Oregon State.
That
They beat,
Yeah, and they
like,
beat Wyoming at 4, but that was a snow game too. So I know that they're not going to necessarily hold it against them, because it was snowing in
yeah,
Wyoming at the
it was
time.
a weird one, but okay.
Yeah, and here's the thing about it too is you also, so I will, you say, yeah, they beat Wyoming at Wyoming only by 4, but they only lost to Oregon at
Yeah,
Oregon by 3. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So like pretty tough.
Well,
That
they
was at
only
the
beat
time the number
Nevada by a
17.
touchdown. Just saying.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
no, true,
most of their other
but you
ones
see,
were pretty convincing. I'm just saying that's a
yeah,
super weak schedule outside of Oregon,
agreed.
and then UNLV randomly being good. Well, I shouldn't say
Hmm.
randomly. I
Hmm.
guess Barry Odom's got something going on down there. So they beat like one ranked team. They beat one team that's any good, and we're gonna say that they're like top 10.
UNLV wasn't ranked at the time either. You know what I
If you
mean? Now
give
that they're ranked, their
Mizzou,
position looks better.
well, the reason it annoys me is because I think like, okay, give Mizzou Boise State schedule. What do you think their record is? Probably 11 and
Yeah,
1. Like they
yeah.
probably lose to Oregon, and that's about it.
That's
Like
that. I agree with you 100%. But that's the reason why, like again, I thought that it was stupid for them to move the SEC to the Big Ten, or from the Big 12 to the
yeah,
SEC, because I felt they would never win a championship. They would at this point in time. Again, I think they would be ranked number 10, number 9, number 8, somewhere around there representing the Big 12. To your point, as a 10-1,
yeah.
or 11-1, excuse me. I really believe that's where they would be at if they never left the Big 12.
They
I
might
mean,
be.
now it makes
Okay.
more sense, but
Who's to say they would have gotten the recruits they got if they weren't in the SEC though? Too. That's the other
exactly
thing.
right. You're right. So it's all playing devil's advocate and like, seeing what it is. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I tell you, like, I hate the fact that Alabama is, in the playoffs yet again. I definitely don't feel
Of
that they
course they are.
deserve to be there.
No,
But of
I
course,
agree.
it
Yeah,
comes down
It's
to
all about
great,
the
great.
historical prestige, though, with them. That's the thing,
it's
Yep.
exactly what it is. You're
It's
right.
100% that. It
Yep.
has nothing to do with their performance right now. I mean, look at the blowout they had against Oklahoma. You know,
Yeah,
Yep.
it,
yeah,
it's embarrassing. And let's face it, their schedule is not all that challenging compared to like some of the other teams that I've been looking at overall.
yeah,
So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, you lost to Vanderbilt, right, by 5, at Vanderbilt,
yeah.
okay, whatever. You lost to Tennessee by 13, and obviously got dominated
mhm.
21, and they're all road losses, right? But
Yeah.
it's just that's ridiculous. All SEC road losses. I compare them to Ole Miss. Ole Miss, lost to Kentucky, who was unranked at the time. They lost at Death Valley by 3 to LSU. Then they lost by 7 to Florida in the swamp. Like again, I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna put a 3-loss team in there, what is going to be the best 3-loss team? Now, that being said, here's the detractor for Ole Miss. Ole Miss had one win against a ranked opponent. Now, at the time, it was a dominant win at home versus number 3 Georgia, and that was an 18-point victory there. If you take a look at Alabama, Alabama also beat Georgia. They beat them by 7 at home, right? And Georgia was ranked number 2 at the time. They beat Mizzou 34-0. They beat LSU 42-13. LSU is a team that Ole Miss lost to, right? So it's I don't want them there, but it kind of makes more sense right now.
Yeah.
You could make I believe the argument could be made that I don't believe Miami should be there. I don't believe that South Carolina should be there either. Although South Carolina did, is really came on lately. They beat Clemson in Clemson. I not believe that Clemson blew that game. But they lost to Ole Miss. They lost to Alabama. They obviously beat us when we were ranked 23rd. They lost to LSU, but they had a tough schedule. They did beat Texas A&M by at 24 points. It's just like the back half of the season, they really turned it on. They had a tough schedule. If you want to make an argument that there's going to be a 3-loss SEC team, it's South Carolina. But I believe it should be Arizona State and Iowa State, regardless of the situation. They're both 2-loss teams in the Big 12. You know what I mean?
Hey,
Yeah.
am
I don't know. That's just.
I mean, let's.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
know. I was going to say I may say something that you can agree with or not agree with. I mean, obviously, I know that it has everything to do with the prestige of it all. But the fact is, we were 9-3. Mizzou was 9-3. Bama was 9-3. Looking at the schedules overall, I would say we definitely encountered some top-ranked teams that was a similar comparison to Alabama's schedule. Am I wrong? It just feels kind of unfair. I know what it is.
I think
I understand it's the prestige of it all, but it just seems kind of unfair. The fact that Mizzou has the same, this season wise, it feels like a very similar schedule and the same record. And of course, they're sitting there at the 11th spot, and we're ranked all the way down to 19. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I think the issue for
shoot holes in it all
Mizzou
you
is
want.
who is Mizzou's best win on their schedule? It's like Vanderbilt. Like, I know Vanderbilt's better this year, but that's still probably their best win. So, like, that's where it is Alabama's actually got some wins over good teams, like Georgia, for instance,
I mean,
So
like, because the Boston College thing, yeah, that's a ranked win, right? But Boston College hasn't been ranked since that week. And then you lost your other 3 ranked matches against Texas A&M, Alabama, or South Carolina.
Yeah.
If you win one of those games, playoffs. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you
But
got
it
destroyed
didn't happen.
in 2 of them, too. That's the other thing.
Yeah. You got embarrassed in College Station
Yeah.
and, in Bryant-Denny Stadium in Alabama, you got embarrassed by both of them. You barely lost to South Carolina at South Carolina. If you would have won that game, things would have been different for you. Like, okay, you can take it on the chin that Texas A&M snuck up on you, okay? You probably should have been prepared for that because I believe that you were a better team at that point in time. But maybe you also the week before you did face Vanderbilt and beat them OT. Maybe you expended too much emotional energy in that game. Okay, so you throw that one away. Alabama, okay, you're gonna lose to them, right? It's Alabama, fine. You beat Auburn, you beat Oklahoma, but then you lose to South Carolina again. Like that's the biggest thing that it comes down to, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, absolutely. So it's one of those things where I wonder. I honestly think a lot of Mizzou players bought into their own hype too much. I think that's why
I agree.
They had such a rough start to the
Coming
season.
off that last season, considering that.
And another
still
thing
riding
is
highs.
that A&M game and Alabama game, those are probably like the only 2 games that Missouri played that any of the national media watched. So, like, that's it. Like, they see their record, and then they see those 2 games. They're like, okay, they just play a bunch of trash teams and pile wins there, and then when they play a real team, they get stomped. And that's all they see. They don't pay that close – national media doesn't pay that close attention, but they're also the ones mostly that – I mean, the AP polls, They're the ones voting for those rankings, so that's why Mizzou gets no respect there. But yeah, I don't know. They're still in all the polls. They're ranked at least now, so that's good.
Yep, and I think that's what it's going to be. This is going to be a very interesting one, man. In my opinion, I think it's just going to be. I mean, I really don't even know how they're going to be able to make these decisions when it comes to, especially after championship week, right? Like I
Dude,
take a look at
that's
some of them, it's like, for example, Penn State, if they lose to Oregon, do they drop completely out? I mean, there would be a two-loss team in the Big 12, and both your losses are to Oregon. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's just like,
dude.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
And that's where things are going to be very difficult, for me, and trying to figure out where you're potentially going to put everything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be pretty tough after championship weekend. That's gonna be stupid. They really need to figure out what to do about these conference championship games.
Yeah. And I like it, but at the same time, the problem that I like it, but I don't, because there's teams like Alabama, Tennessee, Ohio State. These teams are at essentially they're already in. They're ninth, eighth, 11th. They're in. They don't have to play. They have nothing to risk at this point in time. So, that's probably what's going to end up happening, though. It's just like it's just hard to watch, honestly, in that aspect of things.
Yeah, yeah. It'll be fun to see people complain though when their team gets left
Oh
out.
yeah, and that's the thing about it is like there's always going to be like the conversation always is that way, right? Of like, okay,
Yeah.
what's going to end up like who's the left out, but now that we're at 12, it should solve the issue. It's never going to solve the damn issue.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's
Because
always
then the
gonna be people that feel
conversation
like they
go
get
yeah,
screwed.
yeah, the conversation's always going to go to that. So, anyways, real quick before we move on to the last part of this segment, I want to give a quick update of what the playoffs currently by those rankings look like in the bracket. So the top four teams again are going to be the conference champions. And again, this obviously no one's been crowned a champion at this point in time, but they will be getting buys. And then again, one automatic bid to the other conference champion. But it goes by their ranking in the CFP. So if, say, for example, there is like nobody that's ranked in Mountain West or Big 12, wherever, it doesn't matter at this point in time. They're ranked like 50th in the nation. They would still get the number 12 spot. Okay. And they would not get the home game. In the first round, the better ranked opponent will have a home game before they go into the bowl game. So, anyways, number one, Oregon will have a bye. Number two, Texas will have a bye. SMU. Number three has a bye. Boise State, number four, has a bye. That's by seeding, not their actual rankings. Penn State will be the fifth seed, and they'll be taking on Arizona State. That would be in Happy Valley at Penn State. Tennessee will be at Ohio State in the 9-8 matchup. That would be pretty fun to watch Tennessee at the Horseshoe.
Yeah.
Alabama at South Bend in Notre Dame, 11-6 there. Again, should be a good matchup. And then Indiana taking on Georgia down in the Bulldogs layer. That should be a blowout. 10
That's
versus
gonna
10
be a
versus 7.
massacre.
Yeah, that's gonna be a massacre, right? So that's what it
cover
currently
your
sits
kids'
at.
eyes on that one.
But before we sign off, I want to talk a little bit about this and kind of get some predictions for what we believe is going to happen after championship game and where we believe that could potentially head to. If you guys want, I can start out and just tell you kind of like the predictions that I have for the
Okay.
rankings and for the championship games.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Okay.
Go for it.
So, I have Oregon beating Penn State in the Big 12 championship, and Oregon solidifies the number one position, and they will obviously have the number one seed going to the playoffs. But I have an upset. I have Texas losing to Georgia. Georgia beat Texas earlier in the season. And I feel that Georgia is going to be able to beat Texas again in the SEC championship. What this does for the rankings is Notre Dame now moves to number 2, and they will get the 5 seed going into the playoffs. Georgia, as the SEC champion, it will be ranked 3, would get the number 2 seed. Texas would drop to number 4, but would get the 6th seed in the playoffs. Ohio State would move up to from 8. They would move to number 5, and they would have the 7th seed here. Or excuse me, they move from 8. They would move from 8 to 7 on the seed. Tennessee would move from the 9th seed to the 8th seed and 6th in the rankings. Penn State would drop down to number 9 in the there would be their ranking for the CFP would be number 7, but they would be the 9th seed there. And then Boise State would move up to number 8 after they beat UNLV in the Mountain West Championship. They'll be our number 3 seed. Indiana will be number 9, and the 10th seed. Alabama will move up to number 10 and still stay at the 11th seed. Arizona will win the 4th seed as the 11th ranked team in the nation, and our last automatic bid as they will lead out the Big 12. And I have a massive upset here. SMU drops out of the playoffs after they lose to Clemson, and Clemson will get in as the 12th seed. That is what I have currently. What are your guys' predictions? What are you guys' thoughts on what I got?
Well, I could definitely see Texas dropping a game to Georgia because they haven't had like the toughest schedule, even though it's an SEC schedule now. Let me read off their wins to you, their games to you, I should say. They got Colorado State,
Alabama, I know that.
Michigan, UTSA, LA Monroe, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, lost to Georgia. They beat Vanderbilt, Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M. So, Texas A&M, good. They lost to Georgia, who's good. And then, who was the other good team they beat? I think that's about... I think that's it. I think that's the one good team they played that they beat. So it's they had kind of like a nice path through the SEC this season. So I don't think it's unreasonable to believe that Georgia beats them because Georgia had a much tougher schedule.
And Georgia beat Texas earlier in the season. You know what I mean?
Yes. So yeah, I could definitely see that upset happening. That's like the first.
Not to mention, here's the thing about it too is so the Big 12, the SEC championship game is always in a neutral site, but it's not really neutral site because it's always in one place, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a home game for the Bulldogs. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It would be cool if it actually played neutral site.
Yeah.
But let's see, Big 12, Arizona State, Iowa State. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Iowa State wins that one.
Really? So why is that?
Yeah.
Because I think their superior defense and the ability to control the clock.
You have a good defense.
Favorite.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that it makes them favorites against them. But the Arizona State's not as they're not as consistent. So we'll see.
Not a Cam Scatabo fan. Scatabo? That dude's name. That's why I'm going Arizona State.
All right.
Scatabo, let's go.
And here's the thing, straight up, I'm not gonna lie, I really want to see Arizona State not just in the playoffs, but I kind of want to see Arizona State win the entire thing because I want to see the aftermath at Arizona State University. Everyone would die of alcohol poisoning. You're gonna have the number one party school in the nation. Oh, dude, if they go and they win, I'm taking us all there. If that happens, I'll put it right there. I would take us all. I would take us there. We would have a podcast there session. We will interview people while doing Jaeger bombs with college kids. I'm telling you, I will do it right now. So we're all
my liver's already dead.
I don't know if I can hang these days, but
damn, dude.
I guess I'm as
good
once as I ever was.
Right.
Well, yeah. So then let's see. Yeah, I could also see Clemson winning over SMU because like SMU's had a pretty light schedule. Like there's a lot of.
I mean, Clemson has as well, but Clemson has had a little bit of a tougher challenge. You know what I mean? In my opinion.
Yeah. The ACC is a cakewalk, but Clemson has played good teams. Like they played.
I mean, they started the season against Georgia, got absolutely demolished. But they were also without Cade Kubnik at that time, their quarterback. And they lost to. That's the problem with it though, is like they're too or 2 out of the 3 lost to ranked opponents, and they only faced 2 ranked opponents this season, right?
Whoa.
So
Who
yeah,
did SMU play?
right. That's the
I
whole
remember,
point. Is that SMU? Yeah, right, 100%, 100%.
I just remember hearing they had a really easy schedule. I was gonna see how easy. Let's go over this since we're trying to figure this out. So let's see. They got Nevada, HCU, BYU. They lost to by 3. They beat TCU, Florida State, Louisville, Stanford, Duke, Pittsburgh. I guess Pitt's okay, but Boston College, Virginia, Cal. Like that's a light schedule. So
Agreed.
I don't know. Yeah, they're not very proven to me. That's my thing. Like 8's probably a little high for them, especially considering that they lost to 18 BYU.
Yep.
So yeah, that's definitely a good call on that one. I could see Clemson coming away with that. And then yeah, I like Oregon over Penn State. I think Oregon's on another
Oregon's
level.
going to win by for sure. They got that high octane offense for sure.
And their defense is also no joke too. The way they can get after the quarterback, it's unreal, dude. They have good secondary. Packers leave a little bit more of like wanting when it comes to the run stop, but the way they can get after the quarterback, it almost does not matter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and yeah, you take a look at their schedule. They beat 2 ranked opponents this year. And that's the only ranked opponents. Ohio State and Illinois. They were at a home for both of them, but they faced Boise State and beat Boise State. Boise State is now ranked, right? And then they beat Michigan at Michigan. That's always hard to do. They beat, Washington. But they're also just a good team. They've been proving it because, like, the games, like Michigan State, they beat by 21. You know what I mean? They beat Purdue
Well, they're a
at Purdue
fast
by
team.
35.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
The fact is they've got that speed and efficiency, so therefore you can absolutely tip the scales in their favor because of that. They can come at they score quick. They can pretty much put that game away before you know it. So
yeah. So,
I think
are we doing the
Penn State's going to be
AAC?
slower paced. I mean, they have a slower paced defense, but I don't think they've got enough to stop Oregon.
No. Yeah. What were you saying, OJ?
Do you think Army beats Tulane? Did you mention that one?
No, and I was like, so that's an interesting one for me.
Conferences, or we want to go to the G5?
Well, no, I was just saying, no. I mean, like, I was just talking about for the CFP in general, because even if Army wins and dominates Tulane, they'll never make the playoffs. You know what I mean? Because they're down to 24.
Got that spot sewn up.
Right, exactly right. And so, if my predictions,
wait a minute though, Boise State plays UNLV.
Correct. Yes,
so
they do.
They may lose. If they lose, they may be out. Or would they?
They would be out. They would be out 100% because they are right now only 10.
Who would take UNLV spot from the G5? UNLV would? Okay, so they would go from 19 to in the playoffs. Holy shit. All right, that's who I'm rooting for now. That would be hilarious too. Barry Odom, fired from Mizzou, fired from Arkansas, goes to UNLV and makes the playoffs before Mizzou and Arkansas.
Yeah.
I mean, purely by virtue of the G5 being just
that'd be quite an upset.
A playoff spot.
Yeah, being handed a playoff spot, but hey, whatever. Yeah, they would be in as the 12th seed. Yes.
Yeah, because if the G5 wasn't guaranteed a spot, they probably don't get in if they beat.
No, not even close. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So, all right. But yeah, that is definitely what I'm rooting for to happen now, though, because of
essentially out of that game, right, for the Mountain West Championship, whoever wins it is in the playoffs. You know what I mean? It's either going to be Boise State at a top tier rank, like number 3, or 3, 2, or 4, depending on what happens, or UNLV coming in at the 12th seed. Period.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh shit, that's gonna be good.
And that's the thing that I love about the way that they did these playoffs. I would like them to potentially expand it to 16. And the only reason why is I would like them to be able to see the other, like the MAC and other teams, like potentially get into it as well. You know what I mean? Because you take a look at MAC, Miami, Ohio versus Ohio. Like no one's going to care after that. You know what I mean? They're going to get a bowl game. Both those teams will get a bowl game. But you know what I mean? It's just, it would be interesting. Or they can add like at-large bids, whatever have you. You know what I mean? But we'll see. I like what they have here. Let's see how successful this is, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I mean, I honestly think, we'll see what happens. The G5
So
better acquit itself well, or they're gonna get rid of the auto bid for them, and they're not paying
yeah,
it.
and they will make it. Yeah, exactly. They'll make an adjustment at that point in time for sure, and just keep it to the top four conferences and not five. Yeah. Um, if all this plays out, that means that there will be four Big 12 or four Big 10 teams, four SEC teams, one Big 12, one ACC, one Mountain West, and one independent, which I think is very balanced in what they are hoping for as well in college football. You know what I mean? You know
Yeah,
that SEC and Big 10 are going to dominate football, right? So I think if you have four of each, one to the Big 12, one ACC, one Mountain West, one independent, again, you're getting what the fans have been asking for a while.
yeah,
So I like that idea.
yeah.
Let's play this out real quick. If that happens in the way that I have predicted here, Clemson, number 12, will be in South Bend against number 5, Notre Dame. Penn State will be in Tennessee, the 9 versus 8 matchup there. Alabama will be at Texas, an 11 versus 6. That'll be a great matchup. And then Indiana will take on Big Ten rival Ohio State at the Horseshoe, with Arizona State being the number 4 seed getting a bye, Oregon being a number 1 getting a bye, Boise State being the number 3 getting a bye, and Georgia being the bye there. Now, what I have from there is Notre Dame beats Clemson, then Tennessee beats Penn State, Texas beats Alabama, Ohio State beats Indiana. And the way that this works out, it's by where the Bulls are going to be matched up. So the seeds kind of move around because they want to keep tradition, like the Rose Bowl for the Big Ten, and the Cotton Bowl for the SEC, so on and so forth. So that means Notre Dame would take on number 4, Arizona State. Tennessee would go against Oregon, Texas versus Boise State, Georgia versus Ohio State. Then I have Notre Dame over Ohio State. Oregon beats Tennessee. Texas beats Boise State. Georgia beats Ohio State. Texas beats Georgia for the third and final time that they face this year, but Texas ends up getting the win. Oregon beats Notre Dame, and Oregon finally gets their first national championship. Boom, that's what I got. What do you guys think of that?
Yeah. I mean,
Sounds
I
pretty-
definitely, I think it's plausible for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I try not to predict shit too far out because I know.
I know. I try not to. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm sitting there like, if I can get this 1-for-1, I'm buying a lottery ticket. You know
No
what I mean?
doubt.
yeah.
No doubt.
That'd be pretty
Right.
awesome.
Where's Warren Buffett when you need him? Like,
Yeah, exactly right, man. So, all right, guys. Well, that was fun. We will talk more about the CFP after championship week, which is next week. Let's go ahead and head to our sign up. Adam, would you like to tell the listeners how they can interact with the show and ask for new content?
Yep. Check us out, facebook.com/the hometown losers, LOUSERS, or check us out on x.com/hometown losers. Like Josh said, we'd love to hear from you. Check out our content on our social media sites. Also check us out at thehometownlosers.com, where you can, of course, check us out and listen to all of the episodes, and be sure and share with your friends.
Yeah, appreciate that, Adam. Again, we love listening to the listeners. Please get us your questions. We love doing the mailbag segment. If you want to see any specific content, please let us know. OJ, would you like to tell the good listeners what you have for the game of the week?
yes. So, St. Louis specific, and probably really the only game that's gonna matter is well, it is a big one. St. Louis is gonna be going to Edmonton, 9 p.m. on Saturday, 9 p.m. Central Time. So that'll be interesting in that it'll give the Broberg and Holloway a chance to be greeted by the Edmonton fans, and I'm sure the Oilers are really gonna want to, stick it to the Blues. So that'll be a fun one to watch. And also, if
Let's see a
anyone's
potential
interested,
rivalry coming out of that.
oh, absolutely. That's what I saw somebody saying too. Is like, man, could you imagine if the Blues beat the Oilers out of a playoff spot this year? Because the Oilers are low down in the standings right now. It'd be like, oh my God, that would definitely inspire some vitriol, wouldn't it? But I also want to note that there is Mizzou, Kansas basketball happening on Sunday at noon. So it's probably going to be a blowout. Kansas will probably win easily. But there is a lot of bad blood there. So it's always, can always be fun to watch those kind of matchups. So if anyone's looking for something to do around noon on Sunday, I'd tune that in for sure.
Sounds awesome. I'm loving it. All right. Folks, it's time for one of my favorite parts of the show. This is where we're going to dive into some numbers, uncover some trends, and maybe even blow your mind with some unexpected stats. Buckle up, because it's time for this week's
Stat Blast!
That was great, OJ. Appreciate it. And now over to you,
Thank you.
Josh.
Yeah. All right, guys. So I don't have a statistic here, but something that's just crazy that seems to, that happened in baseball, right? So, and let me actually pull up the year here before I get too far. All right. In 1962, there was a man named Harry Chitty. And yes, Chitty. His name is spelled Chiti, Chitty. He was a catcher. He was also played a lot of different positions, but is more or less known as a catcher. On April 25th in 1962, Chitty was acquired by the brand new expansion team called the New York Mets. He was acquired for a player to be named later. On June 15, 1962, the Mets traded him back to the Indians as the player named to be later. He literally was traded for himself. Here's the crazy thing about this. This isn't the first time. This was the first time it happened in baseball. It's happened 4 other times in baseball to 4. It's actually happened 5 times to 4 different players.
Really?
It happened to Brad Goulden, John McDonald, and Dickie Knowles. But here's the crazy thing. Brad Goulden, this happened twice to him. Twice it happened to him, where he was traded to a team for a player to be named later on, and then they went and turned it around, and he was the player to be named later and got traded for himself twice. It happened in 1980 and 1981.
Well, that's nuts. Huh.
Yeah, that's gotta make
weird.
You feel pretty insignificant.
Oh my god, crazy crap that happens in baseball.
That's super weird, yeah. So he was literally traded for a player to be named and then effectively traded again.
Yeah, you're so unimportant. Right. We're just gonna toss you into trades.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever.
You know what?
When's the
return policy?
You know what? You
can
have this
30 days.
Yeah, they're like, we got this leftover dude. We don't really want him. You want him? Sure. Okay.
Like,
okay. Well, we don't really want him either. All right, fine. Whatever.
Turns out he's not really that useful to us. So.
Exactly.
You're like, you can just have him. Yeah. We don't really want anything for him.
Just take him back.
Please take him. God. We're not going to charge you anything for him at all. You can just take him.
That's
wow. So in essence, it's like borrowing a player. Okay.
Yeah,
pretty
that
much.
Would be a neat trend.
Or whenever they put him on, what do they call that? Whenever they're lending a player or whatever,
Yeah, just loan them out to.
Loan them out. Yeah, loaning out. Thank you. That's the frame. The phrase I was looking for. Loaning. They loan.
I know I've heard that. Somebody said something about that before, where it's like, what if all the teams not in the playoffs just loan all their best players?
Loan all the players out.
I
mean, why not? Right?
Like,
in essence, it just turns.
That's the reason why there's a rule against it in the NHL, because back in the 80s and 90s, that did happen.
Yeah,
really,
it's just
a lot.
Good lord. Yeah, you'd have like
it's like the All-Star game meets like the playoffs. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you would do. So like the Red Wings were notorious for this. So they would go to teams and be like, hey, so what's a star that's on an aging contract? We will throw you a draft pick. He's going to come to our team, but our intention is to not re-sign him, and you can re-sign him in the offseason, essentially bypassing the can't talk to players on contract rules and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and that's the reason why there is tampering, exactly. That's the reason why there is a lot of more rules in the NHL compared to a lot of other sports because of that. That's why.
I guess really it would be collusion.
Yeah, it was though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, gents. Well, as always, I really appreciate your time. I love talking to you guys, and we will see what happens, obviously, with CFP, the Blues, and the Cardinals, and see if any trades are made by the Cardinals on there. But until next time, guys, for the good listeners, thank you very much for listening to us. You can catch us next time here on the Hometown Losers podcast. Have a great night, everybody.
This is OJ, and I wanted to thank you guys for listening to the equivalent of 3 dudes sitting at a bar talking about sports. We'll catch you next week on the Hometown Losers.